In 2021, a pitching robot with the frightening capability to copy any windup, any pitcher, and any pitch was invented. The best stars on the planet, like Shohei Ohtani and Aaron Judge, are frequently using this machine to their advantage, whereas pitchers completely believe that this is unfair and that batters should be limited to using this technology. But the best advantage has gone towards Shohei Ohtani, a two-way player who has been able to take at-bats against himself or simply observe his own pitches from behind to learn what he can do better as a pitcher. Despite this robot only existing for 3 years, 1,500 players use it, and the robot can also simulate 1.5 million pitches. It costs around $15,000 to $20,000 a month for 3 whole years, and it's still skyrocketing in popularity, showing quite a contrast from 1970 when the first pitching machine with wheels rolled out for only $1,600 each. Now, we're at a point where there is a pitching machine that is a robot with a literal screen on it and is developing players for at least 21 different MLB teams. Leading up to opening day in 2024, Yankees star Aaron Judge was raving about this AI technology, but pitchers are completely against it. So how exactly is this machine impacting both hitters and pitchers, and is it even fair for pitchers? This idea to create something that could copy any pitcher's function began in 2019 by CEO Joshua Pope. In 2019, he graduated with a degree in engineering, but the reason Joshua Pope wanted to create this pitching robot stems from a much deeper issue in baseball, which is the injury epidemic. He played baseball in high school, but he suffered multiple shoulder surgeries, ultimately costing him his player career. However, his future in baseball was still very bright in the technology department. He got the idea to make this machine when he was in high school, after him and his friends were having a conversation about how many swings it would take for them to get a hit off of former first-rounder Marcus Stroman. Needless to say, this idea has paid off with many different achievements. In the short time span we've seen this robot active, it has already achieved a 120-mile-an-hour fastball. To put into perspective the speed of that ball, the fastest MLB pitch ever was supposedly 108 miles an hour in 1974, thrown by legend Nolan Ryan. The fastest pitch we've seen in the last 18 years was actually only a few days ago by Angels pitcher Ben Joyce at 105 miles an hour. The advancements it took for a robot to pitch 120 was actually based off of a robotic hockey slap shot that was able to shoot out pucks as a human could in order to help train the goalies using a human-like shot. Joshua Pope would end up using the slap shot idea as inspiration in creating what became known as the Traject Sports pitching robot. Pope was also inspired to make this robot because, quote, "What I noticed is that the MLB since 2014 through StatCast and TrackMan was tracking every single pitch thrown in games. But there was no way to manifest this data to something physical that can be used for training. The data was being collected and used for pitch design and helping pitchers improve. But there's no way to make the data useful for batters and for batting practice, which ultimately is what led them to program the robot into learning any pitching characteristic from any one, at any speed, spin, and even the movement on each individual pitch. And it also shows a large screen for the batter, making it convenient, as the large screen is what shows the pitcher's windup, exact release point, all making for a game-changing simulation. But how is it that Traject Sports is getting this data? It's because of a company called Respato. In 2022, Respato and Traject signed a partnership deal where it became Traject's job to act as the pitching machine, and then Respato would compare the desired pitch metrics to the measured pitch metrics. The other major thing Respato is responsible for is allowing coaches and players to evaluate performances against a specific pitch type. All of this is what led up to the robot being revolutionized among not only MLB, but also baseball in Japan, with one NPB League team deciding to use the machine during batting practice before games with the hope of the machine enhancing their reflexes, decision-making abilities, and strategic approaches. In 2020, Traject managed to send out their first machine to an MLB team during spring training. The team liked the product so much that they decided to lease 2 total machines from Traject for their main stadium and their AAA stadium. That team was none other than the Chicago Cubs, the first team to give Traject Sports a single chance. They ended up leasing the robot in 2021, and by 2022, they had already leased a total of 3 of them. They had access to 6,500 pitches with over 200 pitching videos. Traject began making headlines and got its biggest major breakthrough when it began impacting Major League Baseball.
Over the past few weeks, hitting coaches around the MLB have been reaching out to Traject Sports.
For batters, people like Shohei Ohtani and Chris Taylor have used this machine, quote, extensively. In February of 2024, Ohtani had a 50 at-bat goal before playing for the Dodgers in their first series of the year, which, in those 50 at-bats, a lot of them were taken using the Traject pitching robot, which has a special spot in the Dodgers training facility, the lab. It's impacted these Dodger players in a big way. Chris Taylor said this about the machine, quote, "It's really cool. Pitchers have all these tools they use, so it's nice for us to be catching up a little bit." Dodgers manager Dave Roberts would add on to that and say, "A lot of these guys are in there all the time. It just gives you that real live look at a pitcher." Leading up to the moment that 52-year-old Dave Roberts decided to give it a go using the Traject machine, which, by the way, went terribly, as he said, quote, "I almost blew my back out, so that was it for me." Third baseman Max Muncy would say, "It's something we've made really good use of. Guys have already been taking huge advantage of it. But as much as this machine has benefited hitters in the batter's box, there's another major way it's had an impact: injury recovery. And it all starts with a brutal injury that happened just last year."
And Luck's going to the bag. You see it? Oh, he had tripped before he got to the bag.
Like his knee went the opposite way it should have.
Gavin Luck suffered a season-ending torn ACL in the midst of spring training. He would end up missing 165 games, making it a very long journey of recovery for Gavin. But in February of 2024, Gavin Lux was finally on his way to coming back. And while he was struggling defensively, his batting performance was the complete opposite. He would say, quote, "I don't feel like I've skipped a beat too much on that. The Traject pitching machine we have has helped me a lot." Which at the time, it was clearly showing off in their stat sheet as he was batting .310 in the Cactus League. But that's just one example of one player. What if I told you there was another player who tore his ACL, but came back and dominated? That player is none other than Rhys Hoskins. After being in a substantial amount of pain that was almost indefinite to end his season, he made the tough choice of wanting to come back early and help his team make a World Series run. According to ESPN, Rhys spent his month of October at the team's spring training facility in Clearwater, Florida, hitting off of the Traject machine in hopes of getting acclimated to Major League pitching as possible, which he quickly worked through and was eventually even seeing up to 200 pitches in a single day. Hoskins would go as far to say, "I feel pretty ready in terms of being in the box from a hitting standpoint in order to join those guys if that's what the organization decided. Mostly because you're just able to replicate some of the speed of the game." But in the end, his long shot chance of coming back that postseason would not come into fruition. However, in 2024, he has come back, and his batting average might be lower than previous years, but he's provided very solid power in the team's lineup, the Milwaukee Brewers. Whereas for pitchers, they're not happy at all about this robot. One pitcher told ESPN, quote, "You want to have the machine? Fine. But 3 hours before game time, those machines need to be off." It caused a controversy and division around the machine, which we'll get into a bit later. Now, the thing is, this machine still hasn't been perfect for batters. In fact, some are not very pleased at all. One article wrote, "It's not a perfect replication of a real-life at-bat, with some parts of a delivery, such as a pitcher's extension toward the plate, unable to be imitated." With superstar first baseman Freddie Freeman adding that he prefers traditional drills, hitting balls flipped to him or placed on a tee. However, CEO Joshua Pope thinks that this machine should go deeper than training physically and instead impact your mental ability. He would say, "One of our philosophies at Traject is that the way you can make smarter decisions is by training your brain. We've taken a neuroscience approach to batter training." Regardless of the people that haven't found this to be effective though, many organizations, coaches, and front offices are currently cherishing this machine. In a 2023 interview with Boston Media, Red Sox manager Alex Cora called the robot a quote, "virtual pitcher." Veteran Justin Turner raved about how big this machine was for his 2023 season after suffering a brutal injury. He was hit in the face with a baseball, was gushing blood, and was in pain. This injury kept Justin Turner from playing live action for weeks, so he decided instead of sitting around and waiting, that he was going to be training off of the Traject pitching machine because he was, quote, "confident that his safety wouldn't be threatened by a stray pitch." The Boston Globe would go on to add that Turner said that it's hard to see the ball coming out of the hand with Traject, but he also added on and said that it was a considerable step forward and light years removed from the training tools that existed when he first entered pro ball in 2006. And he also said, "It's good to have the visual and see a pitcher's motion and windup to try to understand the timing that you're going to have versus different guys." In one way, it's clear that the Red Sox organization has been heavily impacted by this robot, and they still are to this day. As Trevor Story rebounds from an ACL tear, he had a goal of coming back at some point in 2024 and has been hitting off of the traject pitching machine. In addition to the Red Sox using this, we've seen the Dodgers, Cubs, Mariners, Yankees, Blue Jays, Pirates, and 15 other teams that are using it as well. But this begs the question, why are certain teams avoiding the new groundbreaking technology? Which, there's multiple reasons for why a team would be avoiding this. One of the reasons is because it is far from perfect. Take it from Joshua, the creator of Traject. He said to reporters, the existing machine can only do velocity in 2 dimensions of spin, backspin, and side spin. We knew that there was a lot of work to be done to get the remaining 7 degrees of freedom. We don't control the release extension, that depends on how far away from the mound you are, but we control the ball's orientation, spin axis, and velocity, and the position in terms of the release position, left, right, up, and down, but not away or toward home plate. That singular quote from Joshua Pope acknowledges that it is far from perfect. But if any organization has any complaints, you would have to look at none other than the Arizona Diamondbacks. While they do pay to have their traject machine, their indoor batting cage is simply not big enough for them to be stationed any more than 54 feet from home plate, rendering the machine useless as a time mechanism, according to reporter Jeff Passan. And because the machine is so close to the batters, one outfielder on the Diamondbacks would say, 99 miles an hour feels like 120 for us. I don't love it, to be honest. I liked it more in spring training. It was further back, so it felt more realistic. Now, every guy feels like he's twice as good. He also said, obviously it's still a machine. You're not actually seeing the ball come out of the hand. ESPN reporter Jeff Passan described the image the machine projects, calling it a quote hologram. There have also been some complaints around the fact that you cannot travel with the traject machine, and the high velocity of the machine has also been known to bruise players' hands, and it is also difficult to gauge the ball's spin. Yet, despite this all, batters are still grateful to have this new groundbreaking technology, with one of them saying, "This is the first piece of technology we've had that truly benefits us. Before this, we had nothing." So with all of these flaws, we have to ask ourselves, why are pitchers so against this machine? Well, for one, in 2024, batters are allowed to use this machine in-game, which is something that was not allowed just 1 year ago, prompting that veteran pitcher I mentioned earlier to say the machine should be shut off 3 hours before game time. One Yankees relief pitcher would say, "It's impossible for a pitcher to mimic the at-bat. We don't even really get the chance at all to try to have the upper hand where you can come in and face a guy and read the result, see what's gonna happen if I face whoever. But they could be hitting my fastball for the next 3 hours? That is not fair." But then again, the statement "that's not fair" isn't actually fair either, because according to ESPN, the league-wide batting average has lingered around 242, which is the 3rd lowest mark since 1900, which was 124 years ago. The 2nd lowest batting average was in 1968 before the mound was lowered, and the lowest of all time was in 1908, the heat of the dead ball era. In fact, a bottom 5 offensive team in baseball, the Seattle Mariners, have raved about this machine. But based on their statistics, it's clear that it couldn't have made any big impact considering that they are one of the worst teams in the runs scored category. Yet still, the Mariners president of baseball operations said, "It's a phenomenal piece of technology. You stand in there and you can't believe how realistic it is." Yet clearly, this technology hasn't paid off at all for their team. First baseman Ty France called it legit, and also got designated for assignment this year due to his poor performance, so it shows you something. The only statistical evidence that shows it made an impact is in the strikeout rate against relievers, as the rate is sitting right now at about 23, showing a decline in the stat for the first time in 8 years. And although it hasn't had an effect yet in the statistics, everyone wants to get their hands on a traject machine regardless, including the secret baseball facility that prospects and MLB stars are currently using all off-season. So check out my deep dive on this facility that thousands of players are playing at.